második levelet. Tökéletesek elkerülésre véget szakadélyban.
Hangosabban beszélek, mert ezt is halljuk.
Jó, szóval csak, hogy elkezdtem használni a második nevemet az akadémiában, a félreértések elkerülésre véget, szóval Flóra leszek. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to this talk. The topic, the broad context of my talk is redistribution, and you can think of many redistributive situations in the world, in the economy. For example, take income redistribution in a country from rich to poor, or in a smaller context, giving bonuses to workers at the company, or also at school, how to allocate the reward after a group project among the students. And so what allocations or what redistribution emerges in these situations depends on a lot of aspects, the preferences of the decision makers, the incentives that these redistributions create for the future, also what information people have in these situations. So there are all kinds of aspects, but this paper only addresses the preferences. And so this is a lab experiment, which is great because we can shut off all the other channels and look at only the preferences. So the question of the paper is, what redistribution of income do people choose? And we assume that they choose these redistributions because they prefer those redistributions. They find those redistributions fair. And so this is a one-shot experiment. There are no incentive considerations and no information asymmetries. So the research question is, how do people redistribute income that they earn for performance in a task if the external circumstances of the workers were unequal, or if the ability of the workers in the task was unequal? And I'm also looking at what they choose for themselves. So when they redistribute between themselves and some other worker, and what they choose for others. Yes?
Do I need the mic? No, or just
no. Very loud.
Okay. So let's get loud. There is a difference, I think, between redistribution and distribution. So some of the examples are just a distribution of reward we earn, and that's, to me, is a different thing than earning individual returns and then redistributing those returns from one individual to another individual. So which one are we talking about here?
Yeah, that's true. So you can think of, so let's think of all these as a redistribution. So let's say that students also got some reward, and then people from outside look at this and decide if they find those fair or they want to redistribute.
Okay, so this is what the experiment is.
Yes,
going to be.
yes. So just a motivating example. So think of two workers who work on a very simple task. They have to do, this is a very simple task, they have to do as much as they can within a workday, for example. And the workers are similar in every aspect. So they have similar external circumstances, they have similar abilities. And at the end of the day, worker A performed 50 of the tasks and worker B 20 tasks. And their boss, at the end of the day, gives 50 bonus points to A and 20 bonus points to B. And the question is, do people find this fair? And if, so there are some people who hold the egalitarian view that says that this is not fair because everyone should earn the same, no inequality is justified, so the boss should give 35 points to both workers. But most of the people in this case would say that, yes, this is fair because they got the reward based on how many tasks they produced. And this is the meritocratic view. And this is established in a large experimental economics literature. However, in real life, this is almost never the case, that two workers are similar in all aspects. And so we don't know what redistribution people would prefer if, for example, someone interrupted one worker in every 10 minutes while the other could work uninterruptedly for as long as she wanted. Or what if one worker is just less skilled in this particular task than the other one? And so the question of my paper is what redistribution of the points of the income that people earn based on performance, what redistribution people choose in these situations. And I look at what they choose as spectators, so as outside observers of the two workers, and as stakeholders, so when they are one of the workers. And they decide about their own reward. Okay, and just a quick preview of the results. So I ran a pre-registered online experiment on Prolific, which is an online recruiting platform with 500 participants from the US. And their income in the experiment was earned through their performance in a task. And so the average redistribution when there were unequal external circumstances was 5.5% of the total income to the person who had more difficult tasks because of external difficulties by spectators, and 5% by stakeholders. So these people deviated from the original meritocratic allocation, and they gave more, so 5.5 percentage points percent of the total income, and 5% more to the one who had externally more difficult tasks. However, in the cases where the differences were about ability, so one worker had lower ability in the task than the other, then nobody redistributed income to this worker, not in the spectator sample and not in the stakeholder sample. And so these are the average results. And I also did a structure estimation where I estimated heterogeneous preference types behind the average redistribution. So I wanted to look at whether there is besides the meritocratic and the egalitarian who redistributes to equality, whether there is a third type who rewards performance, but compensates the one who had more difficult job in this performance. And so what I find is that there is 29% of spectators and 25% of the stakeholders who compensate for the external circumstances. Yes.
Just clarification, stakeholders are those who participate.
Yes, yes.
Because stakeholder can be
yes. So both spectators and stakeholders participate in the production, but then spectators redistribute income between two other participants, and stakeholders redistribute income between themselves and others. So that's the definition of stakeholder. Yes.
Do you distinguish between those who would earn more or less? I mean, stakeholders, I understand correctly, two players essentially. One is earning more, one is earning less. Do you see a difference?
Yes, I will come to that. Yes, there is a difference in how they treat these. Okay, so there is this third group who compensates for external circumstances. There is no one who compensates for low ability, and the rest of the
Are you going to talk about the sample? What kind of people?
A little bit of this, or I can also show you demographics. Okay, so first I would like to show you the experiment design and some technical details about the experiment. Then I will show a manipulation check. So I will show you that indeed people with different difficulties, they could indeed produce more or less than others. And then I show some reduced form results on the average redistribution choices. And I also explore some heterogeneities in how stakeholders treat the unequal circumstances based on which end they are on, the unequal circumstances. And I also I show you the structural estimation of the fairness preferences. Okay, so the core structure of the experiment is quite standard. There are two parts. The production, where participants are working on a single task for 15 minutes, and they earn income based on the number of tasks they did. And there is a second part, the redistribution, where these same participants come back and they redistribute the earnings from the production stage. And I wanted to look at the two kinds of difficulties separately. So when participants arrive at the experiment, I assign them into either the task length experiment or the ability experiment. And the task length experiment looks at the unequal external circumstances and how people treat those. And the ability experiment looks at the unequal ability.
Circumstances are defined in this general form, or you give some, I mean, this can be poverty, this can be disability or whatever, it's not the same thing.
Yes, in this case, I will show you, but it will be more or less difficult tasks, longer or shorter tasks, but it will be clear in a second. So in the first stage, they have to work on a task, and the task looks like this. So it's a very simple task. There is a letter combination where each letter corresponds to a number, and the key is at the bottom of the page. So participants have to find the corresponding numbers to these letters and write the numbers here in the boxes. And then when they click on submit and the solution is correct, then a new word a new letter combination is generated randomly, and the encryption key also mixes and everything is shuffled. So there is minimal scope of learning in this task, which is good because I didn't want people to differ in how they learn during the process. Also, it is quite easy to measure production because one combination done is one task. And it doesn't require very specific skills, but still, if someone is a slow typer, then she will do it slower, or if someone is bad at finding something on the screen, then she will have lower ability in this task. So there is still variation in how fast people can do it.
Are you assuming that there is no learning, or are you showing us some?
I'm not showing, but it is, so this paper is where this task is from. They show that there is minimal learning in this task. Yes.
I would challenge this. I mean, if you just think a little bit, you can go letter by letter, and then you search through the whole, or you can focus on all 3 letters, and then you just screen once. So actually, these are 2 strategies, and can get outcomes. So
yeah,
if somebody
possible.
can learn that, okay, this is actually a good strategy just to focus on all 3 letters. Okay, sorry, maybe this is, I mean, in the literature, this is maybe already debated, but
yeah, I mean, there can be individual differences in how they solve this task, but this paper showed that that there is really small learning in it. So because everything is reshuffled and everything is random. So
just an algorithmic point of view, I'm saying this second version is like 3 times faster. If you do it to the computer.
Okay, but that's also a kind of ability that you realize this and then you do it. Okay.
And the reward comes after submitting correctly.
Yes. So if one correct combination is one correctly solved task. It's 10 experimental tokens per task. I will tell about this. Okay, so in the first part of the production, I want to measure how difficult the task is for the participants. And so how do I do this? I ask them to do 10 tasks as fast as they can and measure, or compute how many tasks they could do within a minute. And the difficulty measure of the task is the number of tasks people could do, the average number of tasks people could do within a minute within a difficulty group. What do I mean by a difficulty group? So in the task length experiment, now I said that I want to introduce some external variation in the difficulty of the task. So I give everyone either 2, 3, or 4-letter tasks. And 4-letter tasks are obviously longer and harder in a sense. So one difficulty group is one task length. So short, medium, and long tasks. And the measure of the difficulty of the task for the people is the average tasks per minute within these groups. So I compute the average task per minute within the short, medium, and long task.
2, 3, and 4-letter test means how many letters they have to find from the 26 reshuffled.
Yes. So this task is not 3 letters, but 2 letters for some and 4 for others. In the ability experiment, everyone has 3-letter tasks, but they can, because they found a better strategy or because someone are faster or slower, they there is a variation in how fast they can do the task. So based on how fast they did the 10 tasks, I sorted them into 3 ability terciles. So the fastest ones are the high ability, the medium ability, and the low ability. And I also computed the average tasks per minute within these groups. So I wanted to have a measure in the ability experiment that is similar to the measure in the task. And then there is the production part where they work on their task for 15 minutes. And their performance here depends on how difficult the task is for them, but also on their effort. So during these 15 minutes, they can just get tired or give up or work until the last minute. So effort has a larger role in this part, or larger role. And and their income is 10 experimental tokens per completed, correctly completed task. And this is in the end converted into British pounds. And at this point, they know something about the redistribution stage, because I had to tell them that this is not the final income that they learn, but I didn't want to induce incentive effects. So I didn't want them to choose different production levels because they know that the income will be redistributed. So I tried to keep this minimal and say that, so this is not your final income, but you will make distribution decisions over income in pairs, and your final income will be determined by your or other participants' decisions. And then the second stage, the redistribution, the same people come back and they have to redistribute the joint income in random pairs. Actually, distribute the joint income, but redistribute the original allocation. And so they make the decisions in either of 2 roles. So everyone is either a spectator or stakeholder. Spectators redistribute income between 2 other participants, and stakeholders redistribute income within their own pair. And the decision makers have full information, so they know the production levels, they know the difficulties, and they know everything. And so since I am interested in how people treat these these unequal circumstances or unequal ability, I have to, and I want to find the type of each person, so whether they are compensating type, whether they are meritocratic or egalitarian. I have to put them into different situations to figure out what they choose in those situations. So everyone made 10 decisions, of which one was the true one that had a chance to be implemented in the end. But the other ones were also through random pairs from the first part. So, okay, so I want to show you some decision screens because this is where we can understand how I identify the redistribution in light of the different difficulties. So what I am doing is I'm comparing situations where the difficulties were equal and to the situations where they were unequal. And for example, let's look at the situations with equal difficulties. So this is a spectator decision in the task length experiment. So they see that participant 1 earned 320 tokens, participant 2 earned 670 tokens, which is just 10 times the number of tasks they did. So production is 32 and 67. And they see that both participants had medium length tasks. So their external circumstances were equal. So here, the meritocratic choice would be to keep the original distribution. So give, so allocate the incomes proportional to the production levels. The egalitarian choice would be to equalize the income. And the compensating choice here would be equal to the meritocratic choice because here there is nothing to compensate because everyone had medium length tasks. Now, if you look at the situation with unequal difficulties, then, so this is, the production levels are the same, 32 and 67, but now the spectator sees that, oh, this participant had long tasks, so she had a harder job, but than this participant who had short tasks. So, and she also sees that on average, how much more difficult the long tasks were than the short tasks. So in this case, the meritocratic choice would be the same because the production is the same. The egalitarian choice would be the same, equalizing the incomes. And the compensating choice would be something in between the meritocratic and the egalitarian. So this person wants to reward the production, but also wants to compensate the person with more difficulties.
As for this 3.5 is participant specific or?
No, yeah, it is the average task per minute for those who had long tasks. And this is measured at this first part where I asked them to do 10 tasks as fast as they could.
Does meritocratic have an obvious definition here? Because to me, meritocratic means that given your circumstances, the better you do, the more you receive. And here the circumstances are not the same. So arguably, it's not meritocratic to keep the original distribution.
Yes, it is. So I use meritocratic here as the as in the other papers where meritocratic means that they just redistribute according to production. So I chose the definition. So this was an online, so I ran an online experiment on Prolific last December. And so the participants I had were currently living in the US. And so, okay, so I can show some demographics of them compared to the US population. So this is not a representative sample, but my sample doesn't differ very much. It differs in some parts, but not very much from the US population.
What is this website?
I'm sorry.
What is this Prolific?
Yes, this is a recruiting platform where people can register if they want to do, like if they want to participate in research, and researchers also can register to find a sample for their research. So this is a platform to connect researchers and participants.
I mean, is that so how random is that? What kind of people do that? I mean,
yeah, I mean, of course, they might be different a little from like random population, because these are people who like to do these kinds of experiments.
They're not obviously not all university students, but
yeah,
still.
but I think this is like in every experiment, this is a kind of an issue. So
sure, that's why I'm asking.
So I think because I think this is better than looking at students, because they are much more different. Yeah, still of course this might be selected.
So you do like
8.5.
8.5.
That was the average. 8.5.
Dollars, yes, they earn 8.5.
At what time they had to spend?
The first part was about 25 minutes, and the second was like 5 minutes. But they had to come back, so I had to pay them a bit more for coming back.
So, and what was the break? How long was the break? So
1 day, or so they had to come, so they could complete the first part on a specific day, and then they could complete the second part anytime between 6 a.m. and midnight, like their time. Okay. So this was pre-registered in the AEA-RCT registry. I used the O3 software, and the 2 parts, yeah, were on 2 consecutive days. So I had about 600 participants in the production and 500 in the redistribution. So yeah, like 100 people didn't come back, but the attrition was not systematic to any characteristics. So neither any experimental characteristics or demographics. So it was random. And yeah, they earned $8.5 on average. Yes.
You talked about the possible redistribution preferences, but you haven't told about how these preferences turns to actual payments, and what information people had about the connection between the redistribution preferences and their payments. So what are those?
So they knew that one of those 10 decisions that they make will have a chance to be implemented, because for every pair, 2 people made decisions. So for in a stakeholder situation, you and your partner, and in a spectator situation, 2 spectators for a pair. So they knew that so they knew that one of their decisions have a chance to be implemented. So this was incentive compatible, because they didn't know which decision, but one decision was then in the end implemented. So the decisions had a consequence.
So I could say that it's possible for me not to do anything, and after that claim all the money, and just hope that I will be chosen randomly.
Yeah, but if you don't do anything, then the pie is also smaller. And yeah, you could. There was someone who did 0 tests, so maybe they hope that this is the case. But most of them didn't do this. Didn't follow this strategy. So just manipulation check. So this is, so I want to show you the group level tasks per minute measure. So how difficult the tasks were for the groups in the task length experiment and in the ability experiment, and then how much they could produce. So you can see that in the task length experiment, those who had, so low tasks per minute means that in the task length experiment, it means people with long tasks. So they could do 3.5 tasks within a minute, while those who had short tasks, they could do 6.5. And in the ability experiment, okay, so this is not, I cut the sample based on these numbers, so it's not surprising that they are different, but so in the low tasks per minute group, the low ability group could do 3.7 tasks per minute, the medium 4.7, and the high 6 tasks. So the differences were a bit lower, but still there were differences. And this translated into differences in their production. So the long task people could do 47 tasks in 15 minutes, or did 47 tasks, medium 68 and the high 96. And there was also differences in the ability experiment. So the differences here were also a bit lower, but still between the low and the high ability people, there was almost 30 tasks difference. And now I will show you some reduced form results, on average redistribution choices. And I will show these results in these kinds of histograms. So every histogram will show one situation, either when the pair had equal difficulties or when they had unequal difficulties. And what you see is the distribution of shares, the production share of one participant in the pair, and the allocated income share. So the income share that was allocated to that person in a decision. And so, for example, here you see in the task length experiment a situation where there were equally long tasks within the pair. And so in this case, I chose one participant randomly from the pair and look at the production share and the allocated income share of that random participant. So, so for example, what you can see is that it's distributed around half. So when the participants had equally long tasks, then on average, they, or the most participants' production share was around half. And the allocated income share. So the gray bars, the darker bars show the production share, and the blank bars show the allocated income share. Are there any questions? Yes. This is a spectator decision that I will
just define what are exactly your intervals, so between 0.5 and 0.55.
Yes, yes, so 0.05.
This is an odd number, then could they share equally, really? Like
yes,
if the
yes,
total production was 71.
Yeah, so that's why I gave 10 tokens per task, and the decisions were in 5 token increments, so they could always equalize.
So I'm just wondering how you put this 0.5 if somebody is really egalitarian and always will give 0.5. Is this the right column or the left column?
If someone is egalitarian, that's the blank. Oh sorry, yeah, this is so this is 4 and this is 4.5 and this is 5. So this one, the middle one, is the
so
biggest bar.
Maybe actually a suggestion could be that probably distinguish this type more clearly.
So you mean the exact 50 and a little bit more or less?
So if this is in between 0.48 and 0.52, then you could see more clearly whether this is.
I see. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I will show these kinds of histograms. So first, the spectators in the task length experiment. This is the same histogram as you saw before. So when there was equal task length within the pair, the average production share in those pairs were 50%, and the average allocated income share was also 50%. So there was no redistribution. In contrast, where so this right-hand side histogram shows the production share and the allocated income share of the participant who had longer tasks. So you can see that they they could do on average, so their production share on average is 39%. So they could do less tasks than the other participant, but still there are some, so here is the half, the 50%, and there are still some who could do more, even with longer tasks or worse circumstances. And what you can see is that the allocated income share distribution is shifted to the right from the production share. So there is indeed some compensation for longer tasks. And the average allocated income share to the participant with longer tasks is 44%. In the ability experiment for spectators, now, so this is the distribution of the production shares and allocated income shares for equal abilities or equal ability groups within pair. Again, so it's not very surprising that they had 50% production on average, and the allocated income share is also 50%. But now when we look at the shares of the participant with lower ability, on average, they could also do less than 50%. So because they had lower ability, they could only do 43% of the total production, but there was no redistribution or no significant redistribution. So the allocated income share is 44% in this case. There is a spike here at 50%, which might be because of the egalitarians who always redistribute to equality.
So may I ask, so you showed that the participants could see the length of the task, but could they also see in which ability group they belong to?
Yes. So when they arrived at the distribution stage, that's when they learned about these groups. So actually, in the task length experiment, that's when they learned that other people may have had other task lengths. And also in the ability experiment, they learned that they were categorized into low, higher, medium ability. And then there are other people with other abilities. Okay, and for stakeholders in the task length experiment, so now you also see the production share and the allocated income share of a random participant from the pair. So this can be either the decision-making stakeholder or the other person. And so again, the production share was 50% on average, and the allocated income share was 50%. You see some spikes here at 0 and 1 because some stakeholders took all the money to themselves. Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, then the allocation preferences have a smaller variance than the production, the distribution of the production. And does this have any meaning or interpretation?
This could be because of these groups, so that people have specific preferences over allocations, and if someone equalizes the incomes always, then this will reduce the variance of all the decisions, for example. So that can be because of that. And so when one stakeholder had longer tasks than the other one, then again the production share was on average 39%, and stakeholders as well redistributed towards this participant who was disadvantaged, who had longer tasks. So the average allocated income share was also 44% in this case. And this is a question? Yeah.
So about so suppose that this participant was very high ability or effective, let's say. Then do you also distinguish between the do you also analyze the choices of the participant based on their ability? So maybe those with a high ability have different allocated income. Now, if I understand correctly, this is just the average.
Yes, yes.
But
yes, I will show you the results based on task length, and that will differ, but based on ability, it doesn't. So there is no difference.
So I mean, you don't have like a matrix where you would say that so I mean, it can matter really that somebody who really did a huge effort, and then probably he has a different distribution for the allocation than others. Yeah?
Yes, it could be, but it's not. Okay, so you mean in the ability experiment when only the ability differences? So there were no differences in external circumstances.
Okay, so
and
take the left picture.
But this is in the task length. So this is about the external, unequal external circumstances. But I will show you results based on own situation, and then maybe this will be more clear.
This is the point. What is how the decision is taken?
I'm sorry.
How do they decide?
I didn't show you the decision itself, but so in this screen there is so they see the screen, and there is a slider on the bottom. I just cut it because I didn't want to show. But so there is a slider, and they have to click on the slider and choose the allocation. And afterwards, one of their decisions will get implemented. Randomly, yes.
And do you use this information, the deviation?
Which deviation?
I mean the deviation of the votes.
You mean like this? Or the deviation from the initial allocation?
Deviation between the two votes. Whether this has any meaningful.
I'm sorry, I don't. Which votes?
So there is a vote for the suggestion, right? And then you randomly use one of them.
Yes, yes.
And do you use the deviation between these two?
I use all of them.
You randomly pay one of them. She uses
Yes.
all the info.
Yeah, I use
based
all the
on
info. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I use all because with these 10 decisions, everyone gets put into different situations, and I need all of this information. Yes. Okay, and just stakeholders in the ability experiment is pretty similar to spectators in the ability experiment. So with equal ability, average production share is 50%, and they do not distribute. And with when there is unequal ability, then the production share and the allocated income share of the disadvantaged participant is the same. It's 44%. Yes.
Can I add something? Maybe I missed this. So ability only means how many tasks they did within a certain period of time, right?
When I ask them to do 10 tasks.
Yeah. So but this can also be a measure of effort, or laziness, or whatever. So that's not necessarily ability.
Yeah. So I try to make sure that this is really about ability. So I can show you. Yeah, so I asked them to do it as fast as they could. They also, there was a time limit on this part. I told them that this is a very important, this will provide important information about how fast the tasks can be done. And I also, at the end of the experiment, I asked them to rate on a 0 to 10 scale how much effort they put in to this part of the experiment, and the average effort levels are the same within the groups or across the groups, sorry. So the low, medium, and short task people put in the same effort, and low, medium, and high ability people put in the same effort. Okay, and so I want to look at the stakeholder decisions in the task length experiment. And I want to see whether they treat the unequal circumstances in a self-serving way. So you saw that spectators and stakeholders in the task length experiment, they redistributed both towards the person who had longer tasks. But there is evidence that in situations with unequal circumstances, when there is uncertainty about what exactly caused the success of a participant, so whether it was, so they don't know whether they are the advantaged or the disadvantaged one in the pair in terms of circumstances, then successful subjects, so who could produce more, who earn the bonus, they attribute their success to their high effort as opposed to luck. And unsuccessful subjects attribute their unsuccessfulness to luck, to bad luck, and not low effort. And in these papers, actually, success depended only on the external circumstance, but subjects did not know this. And so both successful and unsuccessful subjects chose redistribution according to their beliefs about about the source of their own success. So my question is whether my stakeholders with unequal task length redistribute self-servingly, even with full information. So there is no uncertainty here about the source of own success. And so first, I want to compare stakeholder decisions to spectator decisions in the same situations. So first, let's look at what spectators do. So now I distinguish between three situations. So I choose one random participant from the pair, and there are three types of situations: when this random participant had longer tasks, when the tasks were equally long, and when she had shorter tasks. And I do this three categories because stakeholders can also, when they think about their own income, they can also be in either of these three situations. So they can have longer tasks, equal tasks, or shorter tasks. And so what you see is that spectators redistribute about 5% about 5% of the total income to the participant who had longer tasks. They do not redistribute on average with equal task length, and they redistribute, so they take 5% from the participant who had shorter tasks. So what do stakeholders do? In contrast, they always take to themselves, but the magnitude is different. So long task stakeholders take a lot, and in equal task length, they also take some, and shorter task stakeholders, they take less, but still they take. But the question is whether, so it's not surprising that the stakeholders take money because it's their own money, and it's also established in the literature that stakeholder decisions differ from spectator decisions in this aspect, that it's their own money, so they want a bit more. So they put some weight on own income and also on the fairness considerations. So the question is whether the differences between these bars is the same. And it's actually not the same. So so now what you see is that the left-hand side variable is the excess income share. So the income share allocated minus the production share to a participant or to themselves if it's a stakeholder decision. So now spectators and stakeholders are pooled. And so what you can see is that on average, stakeholders take 6 percentage points more than spectators give in a random situation. If we control for the situation, so the unequal, whether there were unequal circumstances, this is still the case. But when we interact the stakeholder situation with the unequal task length, then we see that stakeholders with equal task length take 4.4 percentage points more to themselves than what spectators give in equal task length situations. But those stakeholders who had longer tasks and those who had shorter tasks also take a bit more, even more. But it's only the short task stakeholder coefficient is significant. So those stakeholders who had shorter tasks, they do not redistribute as much to the longer task stakeholder. And so it seems that they still, even if they know that the other person had more difficulties and it was external, they still regard this as the result of their high effort, and they do not redistribute as much. Yeah.
Have you looked at this by gender?
No, but I can. Yeah, it's a good idea. Thank you. Okay. And then in the last some time, I will show you a structural estimation of fairness preferences behind the average choices, because so these what I showed you were average redistribution situations, but as we saw, people have specific and well distinguishable fairness preferences or fairness views. And I want to find these distinct fairness views in the sample. So I want to estimate the shares of people with specific fairness views. And for this, I use the model of Kaplan and co-authors. So, okay. So based on this model, a person with a fairness type K, which can be meritocratic or egalitarian, finds the following allocation of joint income y fair. So if the person is meritocratic, then she allocates the income based on performance. So X is the number of tasks. X1 is the number of tasks participant 1 in the pair did, and X2 is the number of tasks participant 2 did. So she will, and T is the tokens given to participant 1. So she will give the tokens based on production differences. The egalitarian person says that any inequality is unfair, so she will always redistribute the income to equality. And I add the third type to this. So I call this type a compensating meritocrat who rewards production, but also compensates the one who had a more difficult job. And for this structural estimation, I had to put I had to have a functional form for this decision. So what I did is this weighting. So so this person rewards production, but weights the production by how difficult it was for that person. So this theta is the average tasks per minute of the group, of the task line group or the ability group of that participant. So this compensating meritocrat allocates based on this weighted production share. Okay, so the utility maximization of spectators and stakeholders look like this. So spectators want to basically minimize the deviation of their decision from the decision that they find fair. So this T1K is the decision that is the allocation that a spectator with fairness preference K finds fair. So the optimal spectator choice will be just to choose what they find fair. For stakeholders, it's a bit more complicated because they also have their own income is at stake. So in their utility function, there is the own income and also what they find fair, and they put some weight on fairness as well. So beta shows the weight attached to fairness compared to their own income. So the optimal stakeholder choice will be the tokens that they find fair to give to themselves, plus some share of the total income that depends on how selfish they are. Okay, and so I will show you a maximum likelihood estimation And for that, I need to put some structure on the choices. So I decided to choose a linear structure. So spectators' choice is what they find fair plus some decision error, which has normal distribution. And the stakeholders' choice is again linear, so they choose what they find fair, what their type finds fair, and plus some share of the total income in that pair that they are deciding. And yeah, and so the total likelihood contribution of participant given K is just the normal distribution 10 times because they have 10 decisions, and for stakeholders as well. And so I want to estimate the shares of the specific types. So the total likelihood of the contribution of a participant will be the share, the probability that this participant is a meritocratic times the likelihood if she's a meritocratic type, plus the probability that she is an egalitarian times the likelihood, her likelihood if she's an egalitarian type, and the lambda C is the corresponds to the compensators. So and lambdas are the shares of the specific types in the sample. So these are the parameters that I'm going to estimate, and the total log likelihood is just the sum of the log likelihoods. Okay, and so yes.
Do these three categories cover all the possible types?
I assume that yes, but I could have probably a fourth type that cannot be categorized, but I didn't try that. So now I assume that everyone is either of these, fits either of these three categories.
Shouldn't people make 2 decisions every case? For example, how much guy A and how much guy B gets?
Sorry, can you
repeat? So if people are asymmetric in a specific experiment, like one is luckier than the other, or has a higher ability than the other, then shouldn't people make 2 decisions here? How much one guy gets and how much the other? Because if I'm not mistaken, then you assume that by this functional form that the decision is symmetric. I'm not sure it's true if, for example, people are loss lovers and their reference point is the right.
So the decision that they make is symmetric because they choose for one participant and the other one gets the total income minus that amount. So
but if people have any kind of reference point, then their preference will be not symmetric around. So perhaps it may hurt people emotionally to get away money from them more than giving money to the other, or perhaps people have suffer more if somebody get less than half of the money, then how much they happy are about to get some. In this case, that the diffraction will be estimated.
I think that I would find these people among the egalitarians, but I will. Yeah, we can talk about this later. Perhaps there can be other functional forms. Yeah, behind this. Yes.
You also estimate beta?
Yes. In the 2 slides you will see.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What Annika was saying actually is that you can very easily, and you should check how many of the people are actually outside these categories. It's very easy if you just look at the distribution. It's very easy to see who is contributing, who is allocating, let's say, over the meritocratic or other.
Okay. So first I did estimation separately for the spectators and for the stakeholders. So first I'm showing you the spectators. So here the parameters to estimate are the standard deviation of the decision error and the share of meritocrats, egalitarians, and compensators. And so what I find is that in the task length experiment, 55% does not redistribute the income based on performance, even with unequal task length. So these people can be classified as meritocrats in a sense that they only reward protection. 15% of them are egalitarians, and there is 29% who compensate the participant with longer tasks. And in the ability experiment, what I can also find is the share of compensators for ability differences, but there is none. So it's a 0. Yes.
How do you interpret this exactly? It means that 9% of people are compensating type, or people have 3 different emotions, and then 29% of these emotions are compensating. Because it's 5 different things.
It's 3 different types of people. So some people are meritocratic type, and they in all the decisions they choose the meritocratic allocation. Some are egalitarians, they always equalize, and some are compensators, so they always compensate.
So reformulate, you are assuming that these people would be also meritocratic in another game, another setting, another state of life.
I think so, yes. So in another setting with perhaps different unequal difficulties, unequal external circumstances, they would again choose the production-based allocation. And so what is interesting is that, so even though there are no compensators in the ability experiment, still it could have happened that I explicitly tell people that some are low ability, some are high ability in this task. So maybe it could have made them more egalitarian, sorry, but it didn't. So the share of egalitarians is, if anything, it's lower in this, but it's not different from the share of egalitarians in the task length experiment.
Sorry, then why exactly do you need this maximum likelihood estimation? I mean, you could probably just take a look at your sample and count how many people chose the meritocratic allocation, how many egalitarian, and how many would be.
It's because they can have some error in the decisions. Also, my slider may not have been the best choice because it was hard to. Some people complained afterwards that it was hard to put the slider exactly where they wanted. So this also takes care of this problem. Yeah, but I did something like that earlier, and the results were similar. This is just more.
So actually, I wanted to ask something similar. Like I remember you showed a case where you presented the production for both participants and also the average time per task, depending on the length of the task. Now, but this is not an easy calculation to compute for the spectator. Actually, whether some of these participants made a high effort. So it makes sense to also show what is actually the relative effectiveness of these players depending on the task lengths.
Yes, so I chose to do this to just show them the average difficulty of the task to have this simple measure of the difficulty, and then yeah, they had to somehow treat it in their head. So so of course this estimation this assumes this this particular functional form, this weighting. So I could check other functional forms. I didn't do it yet, but I don't think that it would change the results much. Or so that there still would be a large share of these compensators. It's maybe the exact share would be different if I assume some other functional form, but the core result that there are these kinds of people would be unchanged. Okay, and for the stakeholders, I had to estimate also beta, which is the weight they put on fairness compared to their own income. And so these are the results.
What is sigma?
Sigma is the standard deviation of the response error, the standard deviation of epsilon. And so here, basically, the results are quite similar to the spectator results. The estimates are a bit noisier because there are the selfishness considerations and there are some fully selfish participants. But if I exclude those who always take all money to themselves, that's about less than 10% of the sample, then it's still, the results are still pretty much the same. So there is, again, about 55% of those who do not redistribute the original or who can be classified as meritocrats. The share of egalitarians and compensators are not so much different from each other than in the spectator sample. And also there is, so now the point estimate is larger than 0, but it's not significant for the compensators in the ability experiment. So among the stakeholders, there is also no one who compensates for ability differences. Okay, so what I found is that people redistribute income reflecting performance to a participant who had more difficulties in performing if the difficulties were external, but not when they arise from ability differences. And so the average behavior of spectators and stakeholders are similar, but there is some self-serving redistribution choice of stakeholders in unequal task length situations. And specifically advantaged stakeholders in these situations redistribute less, relatively less. And for my structure estimation, I find that 29% of spectators and 25% of stakeholders hold a fairness view that accounts for these unequal external circumstances. And this is a new group that have not been identified in other experiments. And but 0% redistributes towards the person with lower ability. Yes, and the rest of the participants fit into the previous categories. So thank you very much for the attention.
You have time for a couple of questions?
Yes.
If you are low ability or Robbie, then he's a low ability or low like a guy, then is he willing to redistribute more than I like I like a high ability guy?
No.
Have you checked this?
Yes, and no, there is.
I think that would be really nice to show.
Yeah.
Because
I think I'm not sure.
I found that my previous argument about asymmetric preferences.
I think this is the stakeholders' ability and income to self. And if anything, then those who had higher ability redistribute a bit more to themselves, but it's not there in all specifications. So it's not.
You should show it in the structural estimation as well. Where they are the same beta, for example.
Yes, I could do that. Yeah.
So one is that perhaps you should do as robustness check whether what would be the outcome if you drop this random decision about the choice of the participants, and then whether the outcome would be the same. Right? If you apply, say, average or whatever times, so that minimize the deviation, and there are many ways how to come up with.
I'm sorry, so I should drop
So
that.
you just decided to choose random, right?
Choose one participant from the pair.
Between the pairs, right? But you can apply other rules as well. So then what would be the outcome? Random, in this case, you know, you have a small sample, and random might not be random.
But among the two, so I chose one participant from the pair randomly, but it doesn't matter which one I choose because it's symmetric. So
no, the outcome is not the same because the payment will be different depending on your choice.
it shouldn't differ. I mean, so
the distribution is made on the choice between votes, right?
Yes, but
you choose random.
But if I choose
the other one will be useless for the redistribution. You do not use that information.
But I do, because I look at the share redistributed, and that is symmetric if I choose one or the other participant. But but I had some results earlier when I only used the redistribution to the participant who performed less, and the results are quite similar.
And the second point is what Flóra said, that you should estimate structurally and use this preference multiplied by the performance. So this structure estimation might give a much richer structure, and the message will be much richer, say that who got some inclination and whether low performers have higher propensity to vote for egalitarian or whatever.
Yes.
And
yes,
this is very naturally lost to the exercise.
Yes, I could do that. I also want to do that, yes.
So in your design, you make sure that all the participants played equal number of games with the same setup, like with short, medium, and long pass. Or was it random?
Sorry, what?
So if you are a participant, you play this task so with different lengths.
Yes.
Did you make it sure that each participant played with an equal number of short tasks, medium tasks, long tasks?
So
they all experienced the same number of harder.
Oh, I see. No, so everyone only experienced their own task length. So everybody, so at the production stage, everyone knew only their own task. So those who had two-letter tasks, they did not even know that others have 4 or 3-letter tasks.
But you showed 10 different matches. Now, what were these 10 different matches? So if you played a long task, then you only show this task compared to some other.
Yeah, so in the stakeholder decisions, I didn't show that, but in the stakeholder decisions, one of the 2 participants were always you, so the participant who made the decisions. And and so that this participant's data was always fixed. So for example, 4 tests, 4-letter tests.
Among these 10 cases, some number of cases where you were spectator?
No, so everyone was either spectator or stakeholder.
everyone made 10 stakeholder decisions.
Yes. So stakeholders did 10 decisions and spectators also did 10 decisions. But these were different people.
As a spectator, you never receive your own task.
They learned their own outcomes, but they never decided based on their own, about their own.
So I have a question that how did you make sure that the differences in the abilities cannot be attributed to any external factor, for instance, slow internet connection or any disturbing factor?
I couldn't make sure, but again, this could have also been reflected in the differences in ability, but they didn't take this into account. I mean, yeah, but I couldn't make sure.
I think we are somewhat over time, so thank you, and we should continue the discussion in the